East Coast of the United States. I have no idea what time it is down and under, but it is time for Shiny Side Out with Dave and Mecky. So I hope you have your tinfoil hat all made and cinched down tight over your ears. So take it away, Dave and Mecky.
Welcome to Shiny Side Out with Dave.
And Mecky. Hey.
On WZZR, broadcasting from Australia for Revolution Radio on, you guessed it, www.revolution.radio. Maybe you didn't guess it, I'm tricking you. Where it's more than just radio, so jump into the chat room if you can. This is show number, believe it or not, 346. 346. Pause for Mecky.
640 and 300.
That's true. It's on air, online, and on your smart device. So grab an app to listen anywhere or listen at home on a Grace Tabletop Digital Radio. If you missed Solaris' show, you would have been maybe a little disappointed today. If you missed it, you were disappointed. If you caught it, you weren't. Dwight Liddy actually stepped in for Solaris today, and I caught a great deal of the show. Well done for filling in. And he's usually a guest, and that's what happens. You know, the guest actually is now the host. That's funny. Solaris will be back, though. Don't despair. But if you missed her show or you don't know what we're talking about, it doesn't cost much. It's just a monthly fee of $5.95, and you get to, get this, you ready? Subscribe. Dum, dum, dum. Subscribe to the station archives, and you can get her shows, our shows, and everybody's shows in an MP3 format. So it's digestible for you when you want it. Yay. The way things should be. Yeah. And that's the way it is. And look, it helps the station run. It contributes towards the station. It has costs. Those costs can't be met without help. So please do that. Help out. You can just donate a gift of money, but you'll actually get something in return. Hawk's like that. He's that station owner. So he'll send you a gift. Check the donate page for your options. And if you are donating, just be careful that you ensure that what you've opted to receive can be received in your country. In Australia, you can't receive seeds, for instance, because we have very strict quarantine laws. And I think you can buy knives, I think. So that's not terrible, depending on where you are. Just check your customs restrictions. Now, Mecky and I both acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land. Where I live, it's the Dark and Young people.
And in my corner of the world, it's the Daruk people, or the Rook.
And we pay respects to elders past, present, and future. And let us remember that beneath our houses, concrete roads, buildings, and lands are lands which have had stories passed down for more than 240,000 generations. That's a lot. I just want you to recognize that wherever you live, people have been inhabiting this earth for a long time. Okay, we might not be the first set of people here.
Very long time.
Very long time. Indeed. Mecky, welcome back to Shiny Side Out. Since I hadn't been doing a couple of shows and you hadn't been doing a couple of shows, it seems like forever. So
right, it does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And yeah, look, I've been away for I've actually been away traveling for work for about 2 weeks. So apologies for that. Nothing I can do about that. And then I was in hostile time zones, and I couldn't do the show. In fact, one Sunday I was actually in the air while the show was airing. You see how I did there? So I'm so clever. No, look, yeah, it's the nature of the job. Dave will probably be traveling at some point for his job also. Yeah. I'm just auguring this year. I'm seeing the future.
Wow, Nostradamus.
No, that's what?
You write it in
yes.
quatrains.
And that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna have a little rhyme going here. So yeah, but look, it was interesting. I did go to Singapore, and then I went to the States. I went to Vegas for a conference, and unfortunately couldn't catch up with some friends of the show. If you're listening, friends of the show, maybe next time we can arrange to meet. That'd be awesome. Of course, for anyone as well, I'm happy to advertise where I go. If I'm coming back to the States or any other city, if anybody wants to have a coffee, I'm all good with that. And you don't even have to buy. It's fine. But yeah, so again, interestingly enough, Vegas is a place of obviously many contradictions. The scale is quite impressive, and the money that is clearly there is also something to really, I guess, be aware of. On the other hand, of course, you have homeless people as well. You've got this opulent lifestyle, and then you've got a whole bunch of homeless people, clearly with mental problems, as talk to themselves and walk in the streets. It's a thing. You know what the funny thing is in the States, Dave?
What is it?
There's advertising for medical, things like medications and pills and whatever. There's actually a lot. There's a lot of advertising for that, for all kinds of ailments. And the ad, I want to say, is about 2 or 3 minutes long. Yeah, telling you how good it is. You feel better with this, you feel better with that. Get some testimonials. But half the ad, the bottom half, is about side effects. So the first they're telling you about this. It's good for this, it's good for that, it's awesome, this person had it, and it's all free, like a rash thing, the rash is gone, never have a rash again, hooray. Then this voice over cuts in and tells you all the things that could go wrong if you take it. I tell you what, I don't know how anybody would buy any medication in the States.
May cause gigantism.
Yeah, all that. And I kid you not, like half the ad literally is the side effects. Or potential side effects that you could get from taking it. So it's something else. I also had some very interesting conversations with a whole bunch of regular folk, like taxi drivers and just people in the street and restaurants, because I wanted to know, what's the lay of the land. And I have to say, Donald Trump has a lot of support. Yeah, his style is even his style is not that. Questionable. I was in the States when there was this letter bomb scare. I don't know if you heard about that, right?
Yeah.
I can't do that. I can't do that, Dave. I don't have PDF writer.
Bugger. Sorry, look, I'm just going to be back in a second, okay?
No worries,
be
brother.
right back.
Yeah, so and the letter bomb scare was happening, and the interesting thing is that we. The media reaction, because they were hard on Trump immediately, and I was actually surprised to see that unfold, because he initially said, of course, it's a horrible thing, and we should not any attack on anyone is an attack on democracy and all that. It's oh goodness. But the media immediately turned it on him, and he was the bad guy yet again. Look, does he have an abrasive style? Yeah, he does. Does he run the country that is like any other politician has before him? The answer is no, absolutely not. He isn't. Is it a bad thing? I don't think it is. I don't think it's a bad thing. He's just doing differently. That's what I said. Remember not quite 4 years ago, but when the elections were happening and the lead up to it, there was. A lot of talk about Trump, and he would never be elected, blah blah blah. Well, there he was, and I told you, guys and girls, if you had Hillary Clinton as your president, you get more of the same. You know what to get. I mean, there'd be no surprises, really. With Donald Trump, we had no idea. I mean, none, and he has been living up to that kind of expectation. Because it has been surprising, and again, I can't fault him for putting America first at all. It's not a new thought. It's not a new idea for America to do that. The Monroe Doctrine. This should be hopefully familiar to most students of history. America for the Americans, leave the Europeans to their own devices back in the day, right? America didn't want anything to do with European problems. It's America. Why would I care about European problems? I don't. Similarly today. Why do I have to be global cop? Why do I have to be the global authority? Why do I have to send all my soldiers to fight all the wars? All right? I get it. I get it. Why do I have to honor treaties that may no longer be relevant? Why do I have to honor treaties that maybe are not being honored by anyone else? All right? Look, we can discuss this and argue about this endlessly, but I do understand the motivations behind it. Right? Because America was spiraling very, very, well, maybe not slowly, but almost inevitably down the toilet. Right? I mean, things were bad. And I'm not saying, things are hunky-dory now. The national debt that you guys have is astounding. It's staggering. I don't think it can ever be paid back. Industry is dying. Education is a downhill slide. All right? Medicare is not awesome. Again, this is where probably Trump and I disagree significantly. I believe that medical care or any kind of medical insurance should be free. I think medical care should be a right. You should have a right to medical treatment. That's my opinion, right? And it should be levied against the taxes. And doctors should make reasonable money, yeah, in proportion to everybody else. And I also have an issue with the money that CEOs make. In fact, I've got an issue with any billionaire. That's me. I have an issue with that because in today's day and age, with the misery that exists on this planet, I cannot morally or ethically justify the existence of billionaires. If you work hard and you're doing a good job and all these wonderful things, smart with your money, it's all goodness. Millions, even tens of millions, should be sufficient, right, to afford you a very, very good life. With billions, I'm sorry, I have a fundamental issue with that. I really do. I'm not a communist. Don't get me wrong. It's just a matter of scale. It's a matter of scale and social responsibility. Because guess what? We all live together on this planet. We have to have social responsibility. If we don't, all of this is going to fall apart real quick. Because what we don't realize, maybe for the most part, is that we are all living under an unspoken social contract. Some people have to articulate that contract. The Bible and commandments, for example, other religions, philosophers, scientists, even politicians, the American Constitution, for example, or any Bill of Rights. These are all social contracts, okay? And if a lot of social contracts we don't think about, they're just innate. We should just know that we have to honor them, okay? And again, medical treatment, right? Especially for the elderly, the indigent, people that can't help themselves, in my mind, is a mandatory requirement for any advanced civilization, any society that wants to call itself civilized. Yeah. Okay. So enough of that, though. So it's interesting. It's an interesting. Oh, hey, buddy. I was just philosophizing about a whole bunch of things.
Nice.
And there's something I know, right? I had a lot of time on my hands because I had 2 flights which were both 15 hours in duration in the last week, so I had a lot of time to read. Yeah, that's fun. And tell you, some of those smells on the plane, there's nothing like it, right? So I was reading this New Scientist article. I think it was New Scientist. I can double check, but essentially, they're finding more and more ghost ancestors of ours. Now, what do I mean by that? So right now, we found a whole bunch of fossil evidence for a whole bunch of, I guess, human, or what I thought to be human ancestors. But now that's changing. They're no longer our ancestors. They're now our contemporaries, like Neanderthal, Homo heidelbergensis, Denisovan man, and Homo florensis, the little hobbits, and all of those, right? So these are the ones that we know about because we've got fossil evidence, yeah? What geneticists are now finding as they're analyzing a lot of that DNA, it seems that we have in our DNA traces of a species that we have no evidence of whatsoever. No fossil
yet to be identified.
Correct. But it turns out that Neanderthal and Denisovan man, or woman for that matter, also have those. Okay, so they also have ghost species or ghost DNA, right? So again, from species that we have not yet identified or found or cataloged or whatever the case may be, right? Now, what they also believe, very, very, very interestingly, in this article, and look, I think it was New Scientist, but it might have been Scientific American, because I think I bought it in the States. It doesn't matter. The point is that they also said, they used to think that Neanderthal and Homo sapiens can't interbreed. And if, similar with Homo forensis and Denisovan man and Homo heidelbergensis and so on and so forth. Now, that's clearly incorrect, because it happened several times. It happened, in fact, there is another species they found, which is sort of the equivalent of the Neanderthal, but in Africa. So the Africans are the only people that don't have any Neanderthal genes.
Okay.
Okay. Therefore, it's believed that the people that were out of Africa, had gotten out of Africa, or whatever it might be, then interbred with Neanderthal. Where Africans, though, did not. African DNA doesn't show us. African DNA shows us something else, which is sort of the equivalent to the Neanderthal, but exclusively to Africa with very different markers.
The UGG.
Okay. Well, it's
Possibly.
quite possible. So the point here, though, is the longest time the scientists were thinking that Homo sapiens and Neanderthal, for example, could not mate and produce viable offspring. More like a horse and a donkey, the offspring is a mule, which in fact is infertile. It's not true in the case of us human beings. And now we have to really widen the definition of human being. Now that they're talking about the tree, the evolutionary tree, you see, the branches coming off it, and then we're talking about species and subspecies. So what scientists are saying now is it's no longer accurate. We can no longer think of distinct species because there should be no interspecies breeding. It just shouldn't work, right? So we must all belong to the same species, yeah? And I believe that is very, very true. I'll tell you why. Okay, we have a lot of legends and a lot of artworks and drawings and whatever, stories about human beings that are quite different in appearance to what we look like today. In height, in skin color, and number of digits, whatever it is, right? But I believe that at one point in the dim and distant past, our species was a lot more varied. There was a lot more variety in us. I mean, even today, so you look around, you go any major city in the world, and you see a lot of different races intermingling. Any color that you can think of under the sun, under the sun. Sorry, eye shapes, nose shapes, head shapes, body shapes, all kinds of things. Now, in my opinion, you should multiply that by a factor of 1,000, and that probably gives us an idea of what the human species looked like at some point in the past, if we can believe some of those stories, paintings, and whatnot, right? And for the most part, for whatever reason, some have died out, some may be living in hiding, and others might have had their DNA diluted to the point that they're no longer distinguishable from the rest of us, as it were. So this is just an update to the continuing discussion we have around the evolution or origin of human beings. Our age, how we came to be, right? And we haven't got the end yet. And what they said in the article was that this linear idea, this linear progression, is a complete nonsense. And this, like I said, this tree that which branches off is also complete nonsense. What they said, it should all be this sort of connecting loops of populations. They might be separated for 1,000 years, then they come together after 20,000 years, they live together for 2,000 years or whatever. So yes, they're branching off, but then they meet up again, they intermingle again, right? Like you would expect on a planet that's co-inhabited by a whole bunch of different. You can no longer say species. What we have to say now is races of human beings. We're all now different races, from Neanderthal right down to us. We are different races of human beings. We're no longer separate species because we managed to interbreed. If we're interbreeding, we have to be, by definition, the same species, right? So this is really important to understand. And so, yeah, sorry, Dave. So it was a very interesting article, and a few other articles in there. It's along the lines, of course, of we don't know everything yet, and we might never know everything. It is really interesting. There was an article on quantum computing. I think they managed to stabilize 5 qubits. There are actually 2 methods for supercomputing. One is I got to look it up again, but I think the largest quantum computer they managed to fabricate was the stabilization of 5 qubits, which is so that's amazing stuff, right? And the world is changing. It's changing rapidly. It really is. I used to go to these conferences, and everybody was talking about tin, storage arrays and servers, and blah blah blah. Now, not a single word about that. It's all about DevOps and deep learning and machine learning and AI, and Kubernetes and Watson and Kafka and data ingestion, unstructured data and structured data, and analytics. That's what everybody's talking about, and this is from a vendor that sells storage, right?
And also, Mekki, the sort of like the Tupperware coding model, where you're just getting pieces and just dragging them into a programming suite. And it adds the functionality, right?
Yeah. So containers and microservices on a software level, but also with hardware, we're now talking composable infrastructure. You're absolutely right. 100% correct. 100%. It's a complete game changer for the industry. If you happen to be in IT, anybody out there, I wouldn't even learn how to code. What you should learn is how to analyze data and write really smart algorithms. That's really the future. Any piece that has creativity still attached to it, that can't be automated. So anything that can be automated, anything that's a repetitive task as a job, you should stay away from. That's my advice to you out there in the world. Anything that can be automated, anything that's a repetitive task, get out of it and do something else. Okay, that's the only career advice that's sensible these days, because I have no idea what jobs are coming.
But that doesn't include you if you are waking up every day in Groundhog Day as a repetitive task. No. For your own environment,
we got to automate
something else.
I tell you, absolutely.
Mekki, it's amazing hearing about your travels and about all the new tech that's out there. One of the things that brought home our climate discussions is Queensland has already hit 44.7 degrees this week.
Yeah, that's
in the hot. It's a hot heat wave, and it's not the hottest day they've ever had, but it's certainly for October. Some of them are 20, 30, 60-year records, and some are records that have been around for 200 years. So, just saying. Yeah, and some of these also, including in the amount of rainfall, we have a very unusual weather phenomenon going on at the moment, and that is a high-level low and a low-level low at the same time over each other. So it's a single column low going all the way to, I think, the stratosphere, and that's something extremely unusual. So it's giving us all a bunch of grief. It's sort of the same thing that they were talking about in, what was that? The movie where everyone froze because the columns of air were so cold, whatever that was, right?
The Day After Tomorrow.
Something like that, yep.
That's what it was, The Day After Tomorrow.
After tomorrow. So that kind of thing is going on right now. Now, last week we had a roundtable, and I really enjoyed having all of the people's perspectives on air. Was really good, and thank you very much for everyone who participated. One of those things, Mekki, that I hear a lot is, and it's perspective-based anecdotal evidence. So
yeah, go on.
Now it's very important. I'm maybe a little broader in the width of knowledge that I've got and the basis in which it comes and where it comes from and how I've analyzed it. Because there's a lot of people who, if you talk to someone from the country, they go, yeah, it's a dry year. You go, hey, well, how dry? Well, it's the dry. Then you get the real information. It's the driest year that we've ever had, and we've hit 2 dry years, the 2 driest years ever since we started recording records. And so, what does that mean for farming? Well, it was two consecutive years in, say, the Hay Plain, for instance, here in Australia, in New South Wales, for that matter, where it's not been viable at all for any planting. There's no result, zero net result of effort. So that's one of them is bad, 2 of them is really, really bad, and this lends itself to the conversation we've been having about climate, refugees. It just won't be sustainable. Now, the people's perspective that we were able to capture last week on the show were from differing regions around the world, and in some of those, they're not seeing the hard times that we're seeing, and some are seeing it's either not dry, or this is too much water, or this winter thing that we were supposed to have had really dipped in and dipped out real quick. So the plants really didn't even have a time to adjust, and now they just think it's perpetual spring. Like autumn just went long. Oh, there's a cold day, but now autumn's back. Mm-hmm. And look, these taken in isolation, you may form your opinion about climate change differently from taking a more overall view of the entire planetary system, because that's what it is. So do your effort, do some effort, examine a wider piece of data. Mackie, some of the information that came out last week was that people are still under the impression that we might be going into an ice age. Look, I don't think I can say that we can't, or it isn't possible, but from our perspective in Australia, that's really unlikely at this point in time.
It doesn't actually matter too much. Okay, so the globe is warming, but what that will bring about is a whole bunch of changes within our climate sphere, meaning that we don't know what all of this actually will eventuate in. Right? What I mean is, let's say it's very hot. That's awesome. It's hot, and there's a global rising of temperatures. We're now looking at 1.5 degrees, 3 degrees, 4 degrees. I mean, this is just catastrophic. What happens is the land masses warm up, the ice melts, the water levels rise, right? And no problem, Dave. And we don't know what that means. The ocean currents will change. The ocean temperatures will change. If the ocean temperatures change, that will affect the rest of the world. It will affect the weather systems. There might be more precipitation. There might be more cloud cover because there's just more water in the system, free, not frozen. The tundras are melting as well. Okay, meaning there's a lot more gases released there. So, to be quite honest, we have no idea what will happen. Could it lead to another ice age? Yes, it could. Quite conceivably so. If you block the sunlight, however you might achieve that, maybe more particles in the air, maybe the shifting of continental masses. When you have the pressure diffusion set in, when you have large masses of water shift, masses of ice shift, it could put different loads on the continental plates, which could lead to greater tectonic activity, which could lead to more volcanoes, could lead to more particulate matter in the atmosphere, which in turn could block some of the sunlight coming through. So right now, yes, the greenhouse gases, they are trapping the heat, if you will, in the atmosphere. That's what they do. But if you had some extra particulates in the air from volcanoes and whatnot, or fires, because the fires are increasing as well, the wildfires, that would mean that you're blocking some of the sunlight off. And if it's severe, you could cause well, it's not really a nuclear winter, but it's got the same effect as a nuclear winter, because you're putting extra particles into the air that shouldn't be there, helping you block the sunlight, and what will lead then eventually to cooling of the planet, right? So this extreme heating and the warm weather and all that can in fact lead quite conceivably to a new ice age. Absolutely, because again, these are all knock-on effects. We don't know what will happen. All the modeling that we're doing is completely off the mark. We know this now, right? We thought we had 100 years before any of this would matter. We've got 10 years. We've got 10 years before it's going to be catastrophic, right? And I mean catastrophic, especially for third world nations, nations that aren't industrial, nations that are very close to the waterline, right? The oceans are rising; those nations are gone. Gone. The Dutch, the Holland, right? I mean, unless they're building higher dikes, gone, because 80% of the land is under the waterline. Under, right? The low-lying islands in the Indian Ocean, in the Pacific, all the Pacific Island nations, all the coastal cities, certainly directly at the coast will be a problem. Imagine a meter. Let's say the meter. Let's say the sea level rises by a meter, just 1 meter. What do you think that would mean? It would mean, well, I can't even describe the chaos it would cause. Because you also have to think about the land that you use for your agriculture. So salt water rises, and it pushes back into the rivers. So the salinity of your rivers will increase because there's just a lot more salt water flowing into the rivers, right? But by the same token, the salinity of the oceans is going to change because you're putting more fresh water in. All that ice in the Arctic and Antarctic, that's actually fresh water. There's no salt in it. Ocean or seawater doesn't freeze. The salt is actually is lost in the freezing process, if you will, right? So it's fresh water. Okay, but if you put all this fresh water when it melts into the ocean, it will change salinity. So things will become less salty. The water will be less salty. It will have knock-on effects we can't even dream of. We have no idea. We just don't know. What we choose to do so at the moment is though to ignore it. The only people at this point that can make a difference, and I don't care if it's going to be a hothouse or an ice age, completely irrelevant, right? Whatever is going to happen is going to be catastrophic. The people that could make the change choose not to. They choose not to make the change because it would have a detrimental effect on them individually. They don't care about the rest of us.
That's true.
They do not care about the rest of us, right? They care about their relative position in the world today, maybe tomorrow, maybe for the next 10 years. But as these catastrophic events unfold, and they will, most of those people will be okay because they have the means and wherewithal to go to places that may conceivably be safe, right? They can go to. They have the option to flee, right? As opposed to the millions and possibly tens of millions of refugees we are going to see in the near future. Climate refugees. They're not going to run away from some war, even though I'm pretty sure the conflict is going to be part of it, because they will run away. I mean, you look at South America now, right? I mean, there's a whole bunch of people just running away because the economy is failing.
Hyperinflation.
It's just hyperinflation. Now, you add to that a failing agricultural sector, a failing food production sector, because of droughts or flooding or fires or whatever the case may be. All of a sudden, you have millions of people moving around because if something becomes unbearable, if you can no longer live where you are, you will run away. That's what we do. We run away because what else would you do? Just sit down and die? No, right? And now it's going to happen because we know that the changes are taking place today. We know they're taking place. We know it. Make no mistake. There's all I can say is build communities that are self-sufficient. There's a huge movement in the last few decades, Dave, and you probably observed it. I love to watch cooking shows.
Yep.
Cooking shows are awesome, right? And I watch British, American, European, Australian cooking shows, Asian cooking shows, and for a lot of these chefs on these shows, even Anthony Bourdain as well. Obviously he's no longer with us, but guys like that. It was all about sustainability and seasonal produce. So these people are sourcing their food, be it plant matter or animal matter locally from local producers, right? So they are no longer slaves to the supply chain, and they serve in their restaurants whatever is seasonal, which makes the most sense, of course. I mean, that's how we should eat. We should eat seasonally, right? That's
But everything's
it's
stored
actually
in nitrogen, Mecky, for months.
yeah, well, there you go. Yeah, yeah. But so my point is that you build communities that can then help each other. I mean, in a very small way, I've got a whole bunch of aloe vera plants in my backyard. I've only got a very small backyard. I've got rosemary. I've got peppermint. I'm growing lemon trees. Like a whole bunch of stuff. And trust me, I'm very limited with my backyard space. It's a shoebox. But when push comes to shove, it'll be those things that might make a difference. Think about how if supermarkets are now gone, finished. How do you get your vitamin C? Really,
Yeah.
how would you go about it? Do you even know which foods to eat to keep you alive? Do you know what a sensible diet looks like? Or do you think we should all eat burgers every day for every meal? I mean, I don't know. I'm not trying to pay out anyone. I love burgers, I do. But there's a whole bunch of stuff we have to relearn if things fall apart. Okay, it's very important. I mean, how long could you be okay in your house if the supply chain folded in tomorrow? And there won't be a warning, I don't think.
Nope.
I think it'll happen very, very quickly, right? So just make sure that you and your loved ones are going to be okay. In Australia, I honestly believe we have a much better chance than in many other places of the world because people here are fairly sensible. Yeah, like I really believe, even in the big cities, people are quite sensible, and there's still this archaic, I guess to some extent these days, concept of mateship. Right, we're all mates. We all help each other. It's Australia. That's what we do. It's our thing. It's changing, but I do believe enough of it is left to see us through, the worst things. Because Australians are like that. We are like that. That's our DNA in Australia. We help people. Yeah, it's hard to put your finger on, but it's a thing. I just hope that the new immigrants that are coming to Australia are picking up on that, because that's a cultural aspect of Australia I would hate to lose. This mateship and the understanding that we're all in a pretty harsh land and we do have to work together just to live here. Everything here wants to kill us. Okay, from the tiniest critter, and we don't have any large predators that we know of officially anyway, right? But every other thing that exists here, little tiny spiders, little tiny jellyfish, and they're tiny. They're all out to kill us. Yeah. Insects of all descriptions. The weather itself. You walk into the desert, you're done in a day. That's it. You're finished. Mm-hmm. So it's a harsh and unforgiving land, and but people do help each other. It's a thing. Look, I don't want to take up too much of our time with all of this. I do want to just quickly tell everybody what we're going to talk about today, and in my estimation, because at this point we have got 36 pages of show notes on this, and it sort of hooks into what we've discussed previously, even though it's not going to take the same kind of turn. And we're going to talk about death, resurrection, and Christmas. Yeah, you say, what? What does that mean? Well, we could also talk about Easter, but I don't want to, not yet. But I think it's time to go back and revisit this, because Christmas, specifically coming up in only a couple of months' time, really, and something like there was 8 to 10 weeks, I think, from now. I think we don't understand what Christmas actually is, and a lot of people have this notion that Christmas is this one thing, when in fact it's a whole different thing, and it's a collection of a whole bunch of things. And to be honest, trust me, we've discussed this with you again, but I have added probably 20 pages of extra new research into this, and I think you might be surprised what Christmas actually means. So we're gonna have about, I want to say, 10 or 12 pages on death and resurrection. And then we have another 25 or so pages on Christmas and what Christmas means, how it started, where it came from. What are the? I mean, do you know why we have a Christmas tree, mistletoe? Why do we have a feast at Christmas time? I mean, was Jesus really born on the 25th? Right? I don't know. Well, not for sure. I don't, but I know that we celebrated this time of the year well before the birth of Christ, or what we believe to be the birth of Christ. And death and resurrection fit into it very nicely. And I'll tell you why. It is the time of year where we all focus on that probably the most. It's for I guess people from a Western cultural background. Christmas and Easter are the times, I suspect, of deepest reflection. Other cultures have different dates, but certainly the Christmas time, the winter solstice of December 25th, has been a holiday for thousands, tens of thousands of years potentially. Certainly goes right into prehistory. Okay, and we did discuss immortality in a recent show cycle. So it sort of overlaps a little bit, and it doesn't hurt to think about death and then resurrection as well, right? So we're going to talk about death. We're talking about the science of biological death. We're going to talk about the diagnosis, right? We're going to talk about why we die. We answered this to some extent, in our immortality cycle. We're going to talk about the aging process as well, senescence, and then resurrection. Resurrection. That's really an interesting concept if you think about it. Resurrection. I mean, this is what Jesus was meant to have done, right? But he wasn't the first to be resurrected, right? There were others before him that were resurrected, and in fact, there were ones that were resurrected after him as well. And there are actually a lot of them, the resurrections, right? Even the Bible mentions people being resurrected before the story of Jesus. Yeah, that's right. So look, that's the show cycle for us for the next few weeks. We brought it to you in show number 93, 95, and 96. So some 250 shows ago, which roughly translates to about 5 years, Dave, if my math is not completely off. So 5 years ago, this was the last time we talked to you about this thing. I can't believe it has been that long. And like Dave said, this is show number 346. Mm-hmm. So it's quite again it's in my I think it's quite an accomplishment. I do believe that we hopefully haven't lost too much of our edge, and hope that you guys are still interested in what we have to say. But yeah, all right, Dave, is there anything else you wanted to share with our esteemed listenership as far as news and so forth are concerned?
No. But thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone. So Meki said this is 346, and we're talking about death, resurrection, and Christmas.
Correct, sir. Look, and again, this is listener-funded radio, and it's important that you guys support the station with your donations, as it were. You can certainly subscribe to the archives for $4.95 a month, and you can have access to all the shows, ours, Solaris's, and others as well. It's really not that expensive in the scheme of things if you like this kind of content. And you know what the funny thing is, Dave? These days, when it comes to the media, entertainment, and all those guys, it's all about content. Mm-hmm. It's all about content. Nothing else matters, right? Everybody's creating content that can be consumed. So you look at all these, like Amazon, Netflix, Vimeo, I mean, whoever they are, right? All these companies which initially didn't create content are now creating their own content. Yeah. Everybody does, right? We had a discussion recently in the States, actually. We were having a couple of drinks. We just talked about it. When I grew up in Germany, we had, from memory, I think we had 3 stations. We had the ARD, the ZDF, and WDR. So these were three television stations we had. And they're all government run, essentially. And they would start broadcasting at some point in the afternoon and stop broadcasting at midnight. That was it. And you would never miss a show, really, because you know when it's on. Because there's a TV program, that's a TV guide, right? That is published. And it really wasn't that much variety either. So people did more things, I guess, played outside and whatnot. So children's programs were on a Saturday between 3 and 4 p.m. That was my TV hour, between 3 and 4 p.m. I remember, like, my uncle was a Martian.
Oh, yeah. My favorite
right?
Martian.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, in German it was called my uncle. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But yeah, my favorite Martian, that's it. That was it, though. That was all the children's TV, if you will, right? And people went out, and so the content was limited. Newspapers were there, radios were there, so that's how people got their information. No internet, by the way. There's no internet. Not even a personal computer back then. Forget about mobile phones. Now, though, we're living in the age of information overload. And I feel that people...
There's a Freudian slip right there.
It is. I know, right? But I feel that we are no longer as well informed as once we were. And we certainly do not look at information as critically as once we did. We are completely bombarded with information all the time. There's so many channels of information that are available to us. Interestingly enough, though, there's a lot less owners of this information, or the people that make the information has decreased, right? The number of people. A lot of the channels of entertainment or news that we access all have the same content. So it's only, I guess, an illusion of variety, right? It's not actual variety. So we are completely inundated with information. Is that true?
Mm-hmm.
So Dave just tells me 5,000 signs per hour while you're driving?
Yep.
Holy moly.
We don't even notice it. We don't notice it.
I certainly. 5,000. Wow.
Yeah.
I guess,
every single sign that you pass, your brain has determined whether it needs to see it or not. And this same thing can be applied to social media now.
Yeah.
And all of I think bombardment is a little light. I think we're drowning. We've been drowned in information. Yeah, you're right. And a lot of it, I think we get subliminally, and a lot of it, because we can't really filter everything, but even things that are filtered from our conscious mind still make it into our subconscious mind. So a lot of influencing information is coming to us in ways that we don't even realize, right? And we know that in the past, in cinemas, for example, they used to use subliminal messaging to make you want to buy popcorn and get some soft drinks. Yeah, that's it. I didn't want to say it, but yes. Single frame into the feed.
Yeah. And consciously, you don't see it, but of course you see it. Of course you see it, unless you blink at that time. But of course you see it. You just don't see it consciously. It's not an active piece of information that's coming to you. So, so it's really amazing when you think about it. So my point, though, is that it's all about the content, right? And there's more and more content. And one of the stats that I learned recently in these conferences, and I'll probably get the numbers wrong here, but it's something like, the gist is about right. 80% of all the data in the world was created in the last 5 years. Let me say this again. 80% of all the data, books, shows, information, written word, whatever, was created in the last 5 years. Think about that. Think about that. It's an astounding statistic. Think of all the libraries you went to as a child. All the books you saw, all the papers that were printed, all the movies, all the radio shows, whatever it might have been, right? In the last 5 years, 80% of all currently existing content was created. Yeah? All the data. That's an amazing number. And this is not going to slow down. Forget Moore's law. Moore's law is gone. Moore's law states that every so often the information will double on another goes. That's out the window now, completely. We're now on an exponential curve for data growth. Okay, now that's just data. Then you've got information. Information is meaningful data, right? That's really what the new technology is. Again, like I said earlier, this is where you want to be. You want to create information. You want to be part of the information creation process, if you can, or the information evaluation, right? That's the new gold. That's the new oil. That's the new thing that you need to be aware of. Remember the movie? I think it was called Sneakers in the 90s. It was a really cool movie actually, with Sidney Poitier and I think it was Robert Redford was in it, and it was all about this group of hackers. I guess they were, and then they got into the battle with an old friend of theirs, and what the nemesis said, the evil guy in the movie, don't you understand? It's all about the information. This was 20 years ago, right? And of course, if you had any kind of insight, you realize that's exactly true. It is all about the information. So therefore, to make a really long-winded argument, donate to the station, because the information here you can follow up on yourself. We have no corporate agendas. We have no political agendas. All I care about, all Dave cares about, is giving you information that is useful to you. That might be entertaining, that's interesting, but we do not lie to you knowingly. We will not give you false information knowingly, okay? We don't want to steer you toward a certain agenda, okay? Obviously, I guess I'm a socialist at heart. I am not an anarchist. I think anarchy is bad. We are children still. Even if you live to 120, you're still a child. We haven't grown up yet enough to form societies that function. And Dave, the more I think about this, and we spoke about this in our immortality show, the more I think about this, the more convinced I am that I'm right. We have not grown up yet, and we are never given the chance to grow up because we die so quickly, we die so soon. If you live to 100, people go, "Ooh, that's old, that's pretty good, man. 120, wow, it's unheard of, incredible," right? Where in fact we should be living for thousands, potentially tens of thousands of years. And I think we need that time to actually grow up, to get the moral and ethical understanding, of the things that we do and the technology we use. And so right now, we are children. And if you think about war, about how people act and all that, right? See, we see like 4 and 5 year olds when we're like in our 30s and 40s and think, oh, how grown up are we? Look at us, we're so much more mature than these 4 and 5 year olds. No, not at all, because we're still ego driven. We're still driven by our fundamental instincts and needs, right? What Freud called the id. The id has a firm hold on us. Yeah, our drives, in German they're called Triebe. So it's a wonderful word, Triebe. And we cannot help ourselves because we haven't developed the mechanism, or most of us at least, to control our urges. Yeah, we don't. We haven't. It's astounding. And I honestly believe that we die too soon. And again, we're going to talk about death today, why we die and all that stuff. You probably are familiar with it from our previous shows. Oh, yes, definitely. Look, I think we've only got a few minutes, Dave, and I've been sort of monopolizing the talking stick here.
That's all right. You haven't been here for a while.
That is true. It's all bottled up. it's verbal diarrhea. That's what it is. You have an awesome announcement to make, though, Dave. Why don't you take us to the break?
Yeah, this is really cool. So David Adair called me up and said, "Can I be on your show?" And I said yes. Of course I was going to say yes. And this is the beginning where we're called for guests. The guests call us. Take care. Just we're going to have a very small station break. Take the time to donate. Click on some ads on the station's website, and we'll see you back very soon. Just a couple of minutes. Maybe go to the toilet. You're back with David Mackey's Shiny Side Out on freedomslips.com, the #1 listener supported talk radio on the net. And I don't care where you are when you're listening to it. You could be in space, listening via the Earth's internet. You could be anywhere you like, as long as you do listen. And you should subscribe to the station, donate to the station, keep it running. It isn't free, cost money. There's link sizes, huge links, servers, software, and a whole bunch of things. And none of the hosts get paid, so we do ask that you contribute to maintain this existence, your extenuated news network. Imagine ENN. That'd be funny. Better than the CNNs. Or the Onion News. I actually like a good laugh and watch Onion News myself. Okay, so Becky's just stepped away for a second. I'm going to open up our show notes and I'm going to begin. This is show number 346. Today's topic is death, resurrection, and Christmas. From every tree in the garden did he grant them to eat, save but one. And that tree, in the center of the garden, was called the tree of life. And the snake said to Eve, in quotes, "Eat of this fruit and you will become as God and never die." That's from Genesis 3:1. So what is death? Death is the cessation of all biological functions that sustain a living organism. Phenomena which commonly bring about death include biological aging, that's senescence, predation, malnutrition, disease, suicide, murder, and accidents or trauma resulting in terminal injury. Bodies living in organisms begin to decompose shortly after death. There is no scientific evidence that suggests consciousness survives the death of an organism. In human societies, the nature of death and humanity's awareness of its own mortality has for millennia been a concern of the world's religious traditions and philosophical inquiry. This includes belief in resurrection, associated with the Abrahamic religions, reincarnation or rebirth associated with the Dharmic religions, or that consciousness permanently ceases to exist, known as oblivion, often associated with atheism. Meki, talk about the etymology.
Yes, the origins of the word death. It comes from the Old English death, which in turn comes from the Proto-Germanic Daubath, or Daubaz, which was reconstructed by etymological analysis. This comes from the Proto-Indo-European stem deo, meaning the process, act, or condition of dying. Associated terms. The concept and symptoms of death and the varying degrees of delicacy used in discussion in public forums have generated numerous scientific, legal, and socially acceptable terms or euphemisms for death. When a person has died, it is also said they have passed away, passed on, or expired, among numerous other socially accepted, religiously specific, slang, and irreverent terms. Bereft of life, that person is then a corpse, a cadaver, a body, a set of remains, and finally a skeleton. The term carrion and carcass.
Eternal.
Yeah, that's the one. The terms carrion and carcass can also be used. So these more often connote the remains of non-human animals. As a polite reference to a dead person, it has become common practice to use the participle form of deceased, as in the deceased. I'm giving you a bit of a grammar lesson here. The noun form is decedent or decedent. The ashes left after cremation are sometimes referred to by the neologism cremains, a blend of cremation and remains. A perfectly cromulent word, if you ask me. Senescence. Almost all animals who survive external hazards to their biological functioning eventually die from biological aging, known in life sciences as senescence. One of the very few known possible exceptions is the jellyfish, our good old friend Turritopsis dohrnii, thought to be in effect immortal. From all causes, roughly 150,000 people die around the world each day. Of these, 2/3 die directly or indirectly due to senescence. But in industrialized countries such as the United States, the United Kingdom, and Germany, Australia would fall amongst those as well, certainly Singapore, the rate approaches 90%. That means 9 out of 10 people that die because of old age, senescence. Physiological death is now seen as a process more than an event. Conditions once considered indicative of death are now reversible. When in the process a dividing line is drawn between life and death depends on factors beyond the presence or absence of vital signs. In general, clinical death is neither necessary nor sufficient for a determination of legal death. A patient with working heart and lungs determined to be brain dead can be pronounced legally dead without clinical death occurring. Paradoxically, as scientific knowledge and medicine advance, a precise medical definition of death becomes more problematic. Dave?
Signs of biological death. It's signs of death or strong indications that an animal is no longer alive. Cessation of breathing, cardiac arrest or no pulse. Pallor mortis, which is paleness which happens in the first 15 to 120 minutes after death. Liver mortis, a settling of the blood in the lower dependent portion of the body. So if they were lying flat on their back, you may see a staining about 1/3 up from the flat level of the floor along the skin line. Alga mortis, the reduction in body temperature following death. This generally is a steady decline until matching ambient temperature, given that the person's no longer producing internal heat, i.e. friction and muscles create heat. Rigor mortis, this is the one we're probably all most familiar with. The limbs of the corpse become stiff, and the word rigor is Latin, and difficult to move or manipulate. Decomposition. I said that because I've smelt this before. The reduction into simpler forms of matter accompanied by a strong, unpleasant odor. Haven't we all smelt that? It's like a dead mouse or a dead rat or something dead. Dead lizards, you smell them too, really bad. Look, diagnosis. Mekki, I'll let you take this.
Okay. Now, there are problems of definition here, right? The concept of death is the key to human understanding of the phenomenon. There are many scientific approaches to the concept. For example, brain death is practiced in medical science, defines death as a point in time at which brain activity ceases. One of the challenges in defining death is in distinguishing it from life. As a point in time, death would seem to refer to the moment at which life ends, logically. However, determining when death has occurred requires drawing precise conceptual boundaries between life and death. This is problematic because there's little consensus over how to define life. I know, this is crazy, right? This general problem applies to the particular challenge of defining death in the context of medicine. It is possible to define life in terms of consciousness. When consciousness ceases, a living organism can be said to have died. One of the notable flaws in this approach, however, is that there are many organisms which are alive, but probably not conscious. For example, single-celled organisms. Another problem is in defining consciousness, which has many different definitions given by modern scientists, psychologists, and philosophers. Additionally, many religious traditions, including Abrahamic and Dharmic traditions, hold that death does not or may not entail the end of consciousness. In certain cultures, death is more of a process than a single event. It implies a slow shift from one spiritual state to another. Today, where a definition of the moment of death is required, doctors and coroners usually turn to brain death, or biological death, to define a person as being dead. People are considered dead when the electrical activity in their brain ceases. It is presumed that at an end of electrical activity, indicates the end of consciousness. However, suspension of consciousness must be permanent and not transient, as occurs during certain sleep stages, especially a coma. In the case of sleep, EEGs can easily tell the difference. Even by whole brain criteria, the determination of brain death can be complicated. EEGs can detect spurious electrical impulses, while certain drugs, hypoglycemia, hypoxia, or hypothermia can suppress or even stop brain activity on a temporary basis. Because of this, hospitals have protocols for determining brain death involving EEGs at widely separated intervals under defined conditions. And this is really the key. You can be in a coma for years, Dave, and come back, right? So this is interesting. I mean, you would think, I mean, most of our listeners could probably think, all right, you're dead, you're dead. It really isn't that easy. It really isn't that easy to determine. There's a whole raft of other considerations as well, right? I mean, if you're religiously inclined, you could argue, well, I don't ever really die. My soul lives on. It's only my body that I'm shedding here. And this is really interesting now, Dave, because I'm put in mind of a discussion we had recently when we discussed immortality and the approaches to immortality. Do you remember we were talking about downloading consciousness into like a storage matrix or machine?
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
So okay, so let's say we can do that, for argument's sake. We have the processing power and we have the storage capacity to create a faithful copy of whatever your brain holds, or whatever electrical impulses are flowing through your body, whatever makes you you. We can now copy it, carbon copy. There we go, right? Is it still you? Is it not you? I don't know. If you copy that then, and your body is blown to bits, or it falls into the sun, or whatever it is, like permanently and completely destroyed, but your consciousness, or what we like to think of consciousness, has been transferred to a storage matrix. But what about your subconscious mind? So this gets very complicated very quickly. So we're in a body, and during the day, or the night, as it were, we are consciously aware of our surroundings. So we walk around, we look, we do things, and we are actively engaged in our lives. Then we sleep, and we're not. Or at least we think we're not. And then we believe the subconscious takes over. It's being processed, and you dream. Part of the processing, I believe that dreams have a very different function, but that's me. But then you dream, though, nonetheless. There you are, you're dreaming. And usually they're two very defined states, conscious and unconscious. Because in the conscious state, they are here. But when you go into the dream state, or the unconscious state, I guess, you're no longer really aware of your conscious being. You dream now. You're a dreamer, and then when you awake, your conscious mind is no longer aware necessarily, or for the most part, of the dreams you've just had. I mean, some of us are lucky enough, I guess, to be lucid dreamers, so they can remember what they dreamt, and even in the dream, they can remember reality, or what we call reality, in their waking state. It's only very few of us that can do that, though. For most of us, that's not the case. So it's a really fascinating thing, and I did study neuropsychology at university for a few semesters, and this was, 30 years ago. And I read up on it sometimes now when I get time. And I'll be honest with you, we haven't really progressed from where we were then to where we are now. The biggest leap in consciousness research came from these researchers I read up on recently that believe that our brain exists in more than just the four dimensions, or the three spatial and the fourth time dimension we are consciously aware of. So they believe there are quantum processes that are happening in the brain. So multidimensional matrix, if you will, that our brain is part of. Now, the question here is, if that is true, let's say our brain, the biology, the neurons of the brain function in a multidimensional state. Can you take that and copy it into storage matrix that we create? Is that possible? Because I believe here, this is me, there are parts of our mind that we are simply not aware of, that we can't measure, we can't see, we can't dissect, and would therefore not be able to copy across. If our mind is truly a multidimensional thing, not just the dimensions we actively inhabit here, including duration, but more than that, we would miss those extra dimensions, if you will, in the copying process, most likely, right? Because I mean, how can I put this best? Let's say you're a two-dimensional being living on a piece of paper, right? And I put a cube on the paper. Now you would be aware of the edges. What you see is a square. Oh yeah, there's a square. Great. And you copy the square over there, and there's a perfect copy of the square, right? But the very nature of the cube is lost. You've got the square. I copied it, but you're not aware of the rest of it. So the cube is gone. The square is there. What can be perceived in this two-dimensional landscape, that is fine. There it is. The rest of it, potentially the vast majority of it, is gone and lost. And I fear, and this is me saying it, and I haven't read anything like this anywhere. So this is me just talking. I fear that if we do copy the consciousness that we are aware of, that we can see and measure, into a storage facility of some sort, whatever it might be, we would lose, in my opinion, the vast majority of what makes us us. We would get what we can perceive here, we would get that, but the rest of us, whatever makes us, would be gone, right? Because we're not able to conceive it. We're not able to look at it. We're not able to put our finger on it, as it were. Yeah. So I hope, hopefully, the square and the cube analogy helped you there, because it's exactly that. We exist in these three dimensions with the fourth dimension of duration, time, but beyond that, we cannot conceive of. I guess we cannot really see that what lies beyond those dimensions.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So Dave, that's I believe that's an issue when it comes to things like that, right? So, and I think that's probably also, if you think about death and ghosts and hauntings and that, because clearly there is something there, and we discussed this in previous shows. Something seems to be left behind. Maybe fragments of something were left behind due to a traumatic experience, a traumatic death, or who knows what, right? But clearly something has an effect on the physical world that can no longer be perceived. Are you with me? So let's say someone passes on, and then the part that passed on, or a part passed on to another realm, or is reborn or whatever. But another part, maybe there was some kind of a traumatic separation between those two parts, is left completely lost, no longer able to function in this realm of existence, but maybe even slowly going insane. And that's when you have these poltergeist phenomena, maybe the hauntings as well, potentially, right? There are many other explanations, of course, as well. But certainly we shouldn't think of the mind as a function of our biological brain. I think that would be a mistake. I think our biological brain is a container that holds our mind, or even better yet, think of our brain as an interface. If you play a game on your computer, let me give you an example. Let's say you play World of Warcraft or Diablo, whatever, anything like a first-person kind of game. Your avatar becomes you for all intents and purposes, and you control the avatar with your mouse or with your keyboard or with joystick, whatever it is, or some controller. Whatever controller, it controls your avatar, and this avatar will do whatever you tell it to do. Right? You might even have a very smart avatar that has some independent actions. I mean, it's all possible, but essentially you immerse yourself in this game, and you, for all intents and purposes, become your avatar, and it does whatever you do, right? But if anybody looked at the avatar in the game and tried to deduce the nature of you, they would be completely lost. Mm-hmm. So if we're getting into this really ultra-realistic games, like really realistic games with these amazing world generators, right? And these really amazing-looking avatars and all that, very detailed and all that. If somehow one of the avatars in that game, uncontrolled by someone else, develops, self-awareness and tries then to deduce the nature of the person playing by looking at another avatar, they would be the investigation would stop right there, because they could not conceive of the controlling entity behind the avatar. And again, similarly, maybe that's how our reality works. So think of our brain as the interface rather than the seat of our existence. It's the interface through which potentially our higher selves are interacting with this reality. And I believe we're actually trapped here, and we're in the cycle of rebirth all the time. So we're constantly being forced to interact with this reality rather than the actual reality we should be interacting with, unless, of course, we're in a dream state, at which point I think we are free to interact with that reality to some extent. I think there might be limitations. Too much?
No. Hang on. I just want to bring it home for us, right? It is said now Oh, by the way, Hawk, this is show 346. I've been chatting with Nighthawk in the chat room, and you can too join the chat room. Go to freedomships.com.
Today.
No, not except for you, Mickey. Everybody else
Not
can.
today.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
All right, so jump in the chat room. You can talk with us while we're on air. This whole concept of us, and possibly the element in which religious texts refer to a soul, is our outside of this world presence controlling this avatar of ours. Does that make sense? What we're saying here is we didn't have a concept, like a true concept, except that living inside the game that we're living in now, in our reality, the reality that we experience, the religious view of our rebirth in the Eastern worlds is very similar to getting another life in a video game. That's what it seems. And you know, unless you fight the boss at the end, you're going to do the level again. Yeah? If you don't beat the boss at the end of the level, you have to do the level again. If raising up levels, or going up to another, or failing and having to repeat, or you've lost your avatar and you wander endlessly inside the environment. That's the ghost experience. Maybe that's where that is. Yeah? But the question that Meki's putting out there, and I think is really great, it's a great one to think about, is, are we actually all controlling ourselves from outside of this existence? Like that video game. So the first postulation was we're viewing it from inside. Now let's just for this second accept that this is a video game and we're all controlling it from another place. That none of us are actually in this, and that we're all outside of this environment. Now, when you consider that, how does that change your view? How does that change your view of the place we're supposed to be succeeding in? Does that make sense? Because the Matrix, the movie Matrix, it covered this off. And we were already in the Matrix and captured by the AI and turned into basically a heat source, right? And they, just to keep us alive, because we didn't like it, they made it so that we were entertained, but not entertained blissfully, because we didn't like that. We had to have some kind of conflict, an imperfect world, which we're always trying to battle to equal. That whole concept right now is not foreign to the greatest minds on the planet, who are discussing this very topic. That we are... Oh, you're in the chat room, yay. This very topic right now, amongst themselves, trying to determine, to be honest, are we actually... Maybe we are in a virtual environment. Because I've made this point with Meki before, and that is that you can't have anything infinite unless you're in a virtualized world. Because otherwise everything's finite. It's out there. It's real. It's there. It can't be infinite. If it's a physical space.
And we're saying, you're right, but we're saying virtual here to give us a frame of context. Clearly, it is not a virtual world like we would, but we define it. It'd be something in concept, something similar. In application and reality, quite different in my opinion.
Yeah.
But yeah. But having said that, Dave, I do believe that we are caught here somehow. So imagine, Dave, and let's stay with the game analogy for a second. Let's say, for argument's sake, that you play Diablo. I used to love Diablo. You know about the game Diablo? I used to love. I played it through the night. I would play it for 20 hours, right? Because I was clearly no problem at all. And then Nighthawk, yes, my end of the connection. Because I haven't got NBN here yet, so it's definitely me, not at your end. Your end is fine. It's me. But so let's say you're somehow, let's say we are living 5 years in the future and we have a neural interface. So we put a little cap onto our head, and instead of using a keyboard and a mouse or other controllers, we're now directly interfacing with the game. That's not that far away, so it's not really science fiction. But let's say we do that, right? And then if something happens and you can't get out of the game, you try, but for some reason it's malfunctioning and you're now stuck. I think something like that, certainly not exactly that, but something like that is in fact happening to us. It is really, in my opinion, we're a stuck entity here, and stuck in a way that we have to come back all the time. Reincarnation, right? So what happens in the game, Dave? Happens if you die, you load up again, right? Depending on the number of lives you've had. Maybe you've got an infinite lives, right? So you die and then you come back in the game. It's actually a really good analogy, to be honest with you. And here in this world, we die and then we come back, but not to the same character that we were before. We come to a different character, right? And we lose all our knowledge. Some of us, or most of us. Some of us actually remember the past.
Up until
right?
around about the age of 4.
Correct. And I think that's to me, this is one of the strongest indicators that we are actually right with the hypothesis, because this memory of past life as well as déjà vu, so reincarnation or memory of reincarnation as well as déjà vu, to me are glitches in the system. Now again, I'm not saying it's a computer system, but it's a system, and it is not perfect. There are flaws within that system, and I'm not saying it's deteriorating or anything like that, but there are definitely flaws. So the question is, how do we escape this? We have answers elsewhere, but just to be clear, so this is why we're having all kinds of problems with defining death. And in fact, if we are right, and the soul is a thing, your spirit is a thing, your essence is a thing, your car, as it were, then you will never die. You won't die, right? And that's how people come back from comas, for example. Maybe they got lost somewhere, right? Maybe there's a disassociation between what is you and the physical sleep you're in, to borrow from all
you
the
become
carbon.
discombobulated. There
you go. That's a nice word. But yeah, so it is really important to understand that the nature of reality is very different. And we have really hard time defining life as well as death, or the transition period between life and death. In fact, when does your life begin? That's another interesting question. Let's dwell on this for a second, right? Because this short cycle is going to take us right into Christmas, right? We can discuss these philosophical concepts here at length, and hopefully have some fun doing it. When does life begin, Dave? At the point of conception? Before then? Does the soul, and in our scenario, the soul, the essence of you, exists before there's a physical body, because it just looks for a new one. So do you then choose a life? Do you choose a body?
That's a good point.
Right?
That's a good question. Do you choose the body to go to?
Some religions believe we do. Some philosophies believe we do.
Is it randomly assigned to you? Do you just stand in a queue awaiting return?
Yes. Yes. It's a fascinating thing to think about. When does so at that point you also have to ask yourself, and this is really very touchy. It's a very touchy topic, and I don't want to offend anyone, because at the end of the day, everybody has to make their own choices, and it's not up to me to make choices for people. But abortion, is that something that should be practiced, or should it not be?
That's a very big topic, and a lot of debate on that. Mm-hmm.
It is completely, and in fact, it is the woman's choice. I mean, but again, the husband or the boyfriend or the man that's involved should have a say too. But the thing is, this is really
voluntary.
Yeah, but this is the kicker, though. This is the kicker. Should the fetus have a say? In fact, couldn't have a say. So we're getting into really deep water here from a philosophical point of view, from an ethical point of view. It's really tough, right? I mean, how do you explain to a rape victim that you shouldn't do it, or you should do it, or can't you do? It is really tough. And this whole question on life and death, where does it begin, where does it end? In my opinion, there's no beginning or end. I think it's just a continuous loop that we're in, right? So again, they're perceived ends, and each life comes to a perceived end. Biologically speaking, your body will end at some point, but your mind, your spirit, your essence will go on. I mean, you know what? You have to live 1,000 or 5,000 or 10,000 years in order to fully think this through and fully appreciate that. And then we're being cut short yet again. And we're being cut short, so we can't think these thoughts to their logical conclusions, right? I don't care how smart you are. I don't care how much time you have to think about it. I don't care, how many books you read and how many books you write. If you live less than 120 years, you will not have enough time to address all of the facets of this. If you live for 10,000 years, yeah, you might have a chance. And I think this is part of the program here, right? I think part of the program is to make sure that we don't live long enough to fully comprehend all these concepts. To make sure we can't think about it.
Do you know, you're not even out of the caged infant area.
Yeah.
Think about this. Stargate, the TV show.
Uh-huh.
Not just ignore the Atlantis never existed, right? Straight away. The Ancient Ones. What if you lived as long as one of the Ancient Ones? This is that populating race that just went around, and they're still alive today, right? If you could live 10,000 years, could you imagine your perspective on things? Could you imagine your outlook? Not just, could you imagine how you would live your life? You would live your life in a new measuring stick, not this human, 80 to 100 years view, or politically 3 years. Not in that kind of measuring stick. Oh, I've got my UPS going off. Looks like we have just had lost power. I'm going to mute. I'll still be right for the rest of the show with my UPS, so don't worry. But I'm just going to mute in between talking, okay, guys?
Cool.
But you can imagine how your perspective would change.
Yeah. Absolutely. 100%. It has to. I think that's the meeting now. Oh, there he is again. Oh. It's definitely something worth thinking about. And ultimately, though, you have to understand this is really the only thing that matters. The nature of our existence. I mean, I went to a hockey game in Las Vegas last week, on Wednesday night. And it was Canada playing against the Golden Knights. And I could see people getting really excited. The stadium was full. It was a great atmosphere, and people really focusing on the game and all that. And it's fun. It is. And, it's worthwhile entertainment. But people take it very seriously, and all these distractions that we have. And I'm just taking as an example because I went to this game, as I said last week. All this noise around us, all these distractions that exist, are just that, noise and distractions. They try to distract us from the true issues at hand. We do need to understand our existence. We need to understand the nature of our reality. Most of us choose not to. And it's a choice. I think it's a choice, right? I mean, if I went to the normal schooling process as everybody else, Germany, then I went to university in Australia, and nobody really, except maybe for one teacher that I had, maybe two, ever asked me or taught me to really think, to really question things. I had a really great philosophy teacher in Germany, and she was really, really good. And she made you think. I mean, we discussed Plato and Socrates and Nietzsche and so forth and all that. That's all good, but that wasn't really the essence of the lesson. The essence of the lessons was, well, what did these people say, and what do you think about what they said? Don't remember who said what. Who cares? She said, right? I mean, well, she didn't say it like that, but clearly that was the essence of the lesson. But what do you think about these things? How do they? I mean, what do you think this person is actually saying here, and how does it affect your life, and how does it change your thinking? Right? That was really the crux of her lesson. And I had a couple other good teachers along the way as well. I was lucky. But ultimately, we do need to think these thoughts. Otherwise, what is it all about? What is it all about? What's the point of it all? Because you will come to a point in your life where you're going to think, well, what is it all about? It's about finding out what the true mysteries of life are. That's what it's about. It's trying to come up with an answer for yourself. If you are religious and you found your peace with that, that's awesome. I'm very happy for you. It's great. If you're maybe Catholic or Muslim, or maybe you're Hindu, and you found your way and you believe that's what it is. That's awesome. But is it really? You have no doubt in your mind that is what it is. And the reason I'm asking is because there's some 7.5 billion people on the planet today. And we have 10 major religions, right? With hundreds and thousands of sub-sects and different thoughts, and, various groupings and philosophies and thought forms all over the place. And they all think they're right. Okay. So for yourself, that splinter in your mind, if you have it, are you addressing that? Are you satisfying your own curiosity? And don't give me that you're busy with life. Okay, it's okay. I get it. I'm too. We all are. But ultimately, you have to ask yourself, what is it all about? Right? What are the potential answers that 7.7 actually. Thanks, Dave. 7.7 billion. 7.659 billion, in fact. Oh, we're getting very close to my magic number. So this is really, in my opinion, the thing that matters the most. And it's also what we like to discuss at 2 in the morning with a beer in front of us, right? But not at any other time. Maybe while you're smoking a joint or something, you get together with your buddies, maybe something you did in university, but now clearly life has caught up with you. You no longer have time to talk about it, blah, 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 blah. In my life, I've only got a few people I can talk to that level, and very few. There's Dave, my brother, my wife actually as well. But she sometimes, struggles with some of the concepts, which is anyone really. And all my other friends sometimes struggle with concepts as well. I've had a friend that once told me, I've never heard anyone talking about the stuff that you talk about, ever. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. It's just a thing, I guess, right? And there are people out there that think like Dave and I think that might have these deep thoughts. And in fact, everybody has these thoughts. Anybody who ever comes across an existential question for themselves, someone that hits rock bottom, or someone that's really happy, right? You will ask yourself, wow, this is what's going on here? Why am I here? Why are we all here? What's really going on? And these are the fundamental and important questions for our existence, right? Trust me, not much else matters, right? I mean, should we live a good life? Well, I guess we should. It seems to be in our code that we should think like that we should live a good life. It seems to be innate. There's some things that are innate. Markers of right and wrong within our context, within the human experience, right? There's just some things you just respond to on a very deep level. Right? Music is one of those things. How can music possibly affect our mood? It's just a frequency that's transmitted through some air molecules. How can it possibly affect my mood? But it does. There's something hard-coded in our very essence that responds to these frequencies, if you will, right? And in the end, it's all about frequencies as well, in this particular reality. It's really, these are the questions, Dave. This is the stuff that matters, right?
Oh, no.
It's
But see, people's lives, Becky, they're so narrow now, and we're, like you said, bombarded, I'll use that quote, bombarded with so much stuff that time is really hard. Now, I don't want anyone to play, bingo with me and with Becky and I, but I've begun, because of my schedule, I've begun to time box stuff. I don't like the phrase, but at least it describes something, where I actually schedule, play with the kids, take the dog for a walk, work on my car, do my iRacing, right? I schedule this stuff so I don't miss it. Because if I know that if I just let life happen, I'll miss all of these things, and suddenly it's too late, and I've missed out. So yep. It's the taking the time to smell the roses, right? But I'm just not doing it just for the roses, and I'm not doing it just for me. I'm doing it for others. I'm putting the time in so others, that we can all share things. Because this is one of the things that I've just been discovering. And that is, you've got kids and they've got devices and you don't see them. you don't see your children because the device, they're in the device. I'm not in the same app. Yeah. And this is how people can ignore so easily the crucial, not just important, they're crucial to your existence, to this, not just this plane, but if you wanted to, level up at the end, defeat the boss, get to the next level, how do you escape? And I think this getting to the end game and not having learned enough, not having seen enough, not having the correct composure of yourself to be able to analyze everything around you. Can you imagine, Becky? I remember one time that you and I had lunch and we were standing at the station and we weren't working that day, and it was people were just going about their lives. Now, we were standing in amongst their lives, that chaos of their lives all moving around us, just like Neo and Morpheus with the lady in the red dress scene, where all these people just going on, they didn't pay any attention to us. Yeah, this is what we need. I think we need to have those moments. I think we need to expand ourselves into this world as much as we can. I think without this, without the way that changing the way that you view everything, and I'm saying changing it from the work, home, shops triangle, is what I'm suggesting that you change it from. Try to live outside of that triangle. Try to take more in, and at the end of this, imagine if you got scored. Can you imagine if there was a score? Because we're talking about death, birth, and reincarnation, right? So, resurrection. So, could you imagine at the end of this there was a score? And it's like, what, you only got 4%? What? I didn't know we were getting scored on it. Wouldn't you want to do really well? I hope you would.
The Mormons were right. What? But that's the thing, though, right? But you know what really upsets me? What upsets me is that people are trying to sell certainty, right? To something that's completely uncertain, uncertain. Because there's nobody can sell certainty on this. I mean, we can give some approaches, we can try to figure out what's what, but to tell people this is what it is, and then cause violence, to me that's unconscionable. That really is unconscionable. It's a horrible thing, which puts me in mind of the recent attack. I don't know if you saw that. There was an attack on a synagogue in Pittsburgh, and 11 people were killed. I mean, this is a horrific anti-Semitic attack, and my God, it's been 70 years since 73, 75, 73 years since the end of World War II. This world hasn't changed. This goes back to my point yet again, to say that we're all children. Because we don't learn from our mistakes. You'd think you would, but we don't. We don't get better. It's just as bad. We're as bad now as we've always been. People say that we live in an enlightened age. Well, for some people that's true. For most people it's not, Dave. And you're right. The best way to control your life is to put things in perspective and give time to things that are meaningful to you, that are important to you. And we should step out of that triangle, right? So everybody, step outside the triangle. Workshop, home. Do something else. Do something better with your time. Spend time meaningfully with your family, children, friends, whatever. Or a hobby. Find a hobby. Find something that interests you. Once you find that, all of a sudden you can think these deep thoughts, because what you're doing is easy for you. Your mind is no longer stressed. Whatever you enjoy, do it, because that allows your mind to roam freely and think the deep thoughts as well. Yeah. Don't believe the next afterlife insurance salesman. I know I'm going to get a lot of hate for that, right? But that's okay. I get it. This stuff is dividing us. It's not unifying us. It's dividing us. I'm right. No, I'm right. No, I'm right. No, you're wrong. I'm right. Really? how children argue in the playground. Why am I right? Oh, because I said so. Oh, because I'm taller than you, right?
I remember.
Do you remember Schwarzenegger in the movie Conan? He's in the first Conan movie. He is.
Yes.
This is really funny, actually. He's arguing with the thief. So Conan says, "Oh, my God is Crom. He's mighty. He's thunder, blah, blah, blah." And then the thief goes, "Ah, my God is mightier than yours. My God is the sky. Your God lives under my God." And Conan goes, "Oh." But that's what it is. That's what we're doing. We are children in a playground having an argument. Still, and I don't care if you live to the age of 200, you still have that chance to grow up. You still haven't had a chance to grow up, right? I mean, this is just nuts what we do here to ourselves. And you know what's worse yet? I'll tell you what's worse. We've only actually, yeah, I'll tell you. We've only made it 3 pages into our show notes. It's not bad though. It's not bad, right? It's not too bad. What's worse is the things we do to the actual children. That's worse. That's worse because we could make this a better place and we could allow us or ourselves to grow up quicker. We could, but we don't. Instead, we choose to make it worse. We choose to abuse children. We choose to indoctrinate children. We choose to bring children up in our image, which is the worst thing that we could do. We don't allow them the room to think for themselves, to discover themselves. We give them predefined roles. We tell them this is how it is. Boys play with cranes and girls play with dolls. That's it. Boys like blue, girls like pink. Really? This is hard-coded into our DNA? Really? And if you're a boy that likes pink, then you're fruity. No. These are the kind of definitions that children have in life. Simplified, simplistic definitions of what is what. There's no subtlety, there's no nuance, there's no discriminatory thing.
Did I just... Looks like we just dropped out.
Then we'll have an argument there.
Okay, we're back again.
Oh, were we not there?
Just for about 3 seconds.
Oh, okay. So we put it on people. We put on people these traditions, which are thousands of years old, which really don't bear any link to reality anymore. That we just hold on to them, right? And then we just believe, this is what life should be, based on what, according to whom, right? We try to give it the connotation of a higher authority, and of course, the ultimate highest authority is a God-like figure. If you want someone to do something, then you tell them, well, you know what? If you don't do this in the afterlife, you're going to be punished. Okay. And that's what do you say to that? What do you say to that? You can't. That's the end of the argument. Right? And if you're young and impressionable, you believe it. You believe it. My children still believe in Santa Claus, right? Because this is actually very interesting. Maybe I should just start, because this tinfoil hat. So, how do we know there's no Santa Claus?
That's right.
Like the figure of a Santa Claus. How do you know there's one? Because we're told there's one. Okay? How do you know that the speed of light is the physical speed limit for the universe? Because you've been told, right? And our measurements say that it is. But there's a lot of stuff that you're being told that might not necessarily be true. Is there a Santa Claus? I'll be honest with you, I don't know. I do not know. If this is truly a multiverse, and I mean multiverse in the sense of infinity, do you know what that means? There is a Santa Claus. There are dragons and unicorns and elves and hobbits. They all exist because it's a multiverse, which by its very definition is infinite, and within an infinite multiverse, everything must exist. Anything that you can conceivably think of must exist somewhere. Does Santa Claus exist on our planet? Maybe. Maybe this is the planet where he exists. Maybe this is the universe where he exists. And maybe it is not. But if we are living in a... Go on.
Maybe it's the planet where there's only one of him.
Maybe. Maybe it's a planet full of Santa Claus.
That's
I don't know. But the point is that if truly either a multiverse or an infinite universe, either or, right? The argument goes equally for either scenario. If we're living in a multiverse or an infinite single universe, anything and everything must exist. By definition, it must exist. Yeah. So that leaves us with one thought, Dave, which
what's
is
the one?
there is no fantasy. Fantasy does not exist because anything that you can think of, anything that you think you're making up, exists somewhere. It must exist somewhere, by definition. Think about that for a second. Anything and everything, and certainly everything in between, and all the things you can't imagine, also exist in every possible permutation that you can think of, and more than that. That's the reality of our existence, if we can believe our latest findings. Right? If that's the thing, multiverse or infinite universe. If this is a finite universe, finite, meaning there are boundaries, of some description, then of course this is not true, and we live in a very limited existence. And imagination truly is imagination and runs free, and fantasy is a real thing, right? So every book that you've ever read, every story that you've ever told, any comic book, any movie, is a reality somewhere, right? Think about that. You are the emperor of the universe somewhere. Okay? You are an 8-foot carrot with a purple hairdo somewhere.
Awesome.
I know,
like,
right?
Sounds like Jared's in my claret. Becky, I have to mention something very important for the station. There is currently a $25 donation to the station promotion right now, where Nighthawk will send you a pocket knife in return.
Ooh, nice.
That's actually pretty good value.
Yeah.
And the only thing that you need to know is to put your address into the buyer's notes during the donation. Yeah? So when you're making a donation, you put that into there and denominated amount of $25, and you'll get a pocket knife in return. I ask everyone to do that. You need to do it. If you live within the continental US and you can get seed packs, get seed packs. The most important thing for your family, should you ever need to, if you stare longingly at your empty pantry after something goes down, and you wonder why and what you could have done in advance to have prevented your family from starving, get yourself a seed pack. Get an heirloom seed packs too. These are the ones that aren't the Monsanto things that have one generation, and these are multiple generation seeds. So they're not limited. Do yourself a favor and do that, because you know what, Mecky, I stare into the fridge and I stare into the pantry, determining what it is that I'm going to miss the most when it's not available.
And what is it?
It's not peanut butter, because you can make that yourself. It's Vegemite. Vegemite for us Australians.
Oh, yes.
There's the music. It's been a great show, 346. We'll see you next week. Stay tuned for a roundtable with Jer Bear. And don't forget, you can notify both Mecky and I via the website, shinysideout.net. Take care, everyone. See you next week.